And so at some point when I was looking for a job and trying to figure out what I wanted to do a couple of years after university, I just thought maybe I should, just go for it and do something a bit crazy or not very, like, kind of the scary option. So I decided to just open my own cafe. I started telling people around me that I was thinking of opening a cafe, and everyone took me very seriously. And it was kind of, I was not expecting that. Like, even my parents were like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing now. And I expected them to be like, oh, this is not a responsible decision. If I could go back and do one thing differently, is that I would have worked in other cafes and restaurants a bit longer. I had worked in a few places as a student, so it wasn't, or post-student, but always as kind of the lowest stage of responsibility, like just a waitress, a barista. And I think going back, I would have maybe stayed in one place long enough to be made manager, or just take on a bit more responsibility in that place and learn more about their processes and all, like, kind of everything they do in how to order, how to even manage their stock and take in inventory and the cleaning schedule and all the small details. And I lived at my mom's for the 3 years where I was working on opening the cafe.
Okay.
And yeah, I couldn't have done it otherwise.
Hello and welcome to Career Spotlight with Vanessa Ajimai. So another great guest that we've got today. If you're new to this channel, what we normally do is that we have various people from all walks of life, and they come and share kind of what they do and their journey to where they're currently at now. And there's like insights and pointers that you may be able to pick and also use for your journey. So today I have with me Lydia Taylor, who is a business owner, and I'll leave it at that because she'll tell us more very shortly. And Lydia and I were actually housemates in first year during uni, which seems like a very long time ago, doesn't it, Lydia?
Yeah, it really does. It was 10 years ago, so it actually feels like 10
Wow.
years.
So it's actually been a decade. Yeah,
Yeah.
so thanks so much for agreeing to come on Career Spotlight to share your journey.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me to come on here.
Cool.
Yeah. Should I explain what I do?
Yeah, so yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So I run a cafe that I opened about almost 2 years ago now. Yes, so right now I manage it and work in it most days. And the journey to opening it was a very long journey. I decided to open it 3 years before it actually opened.
Oh,
So
wow.
I feel like, yes, it was a challenging time. So I studied at uni, did a bit of traveling, did a traineeship at one of the EU institutions, realized that wasn't at all what I enjoyed, and kind of figured out that I respond better to like short-term deadlines and short-term results. I'm not naturally super patient, which is something I'm working on, but I had worked in cafes and restaurants before, and it was something I found very like fulfilling, and I felt very useful when I did it. I struggled to like focus and work on a computer for 8 hours a day. So it was really nice to be on my feet and serving customers and seeing direct results for my work. And so at some point when I was looking for a job and trying to figure out what I wanted to do a couple of years after university, I just thought maybe I should, just go for it and do something a bit crazy or not very, like, kind of the scary option. So I decided to just open my own cafe. There are other things that went behind it. So I had, for a couple of years, I had started trying to live as sustainably as possible. So I was trying to eat local, trying to reduce waste, trying to buy like as little fast fashion as possible. And I spent a lot of time like buying, yes, sustainably sourced products. I became vegan, and I realized that in Brussels, it was very hard to find food at lunchtime, for example, that actually didn't sacrifice any of my values. So vegan food that wasn't wrapped in plastic and that was affordable. So it was really hard to find, because there's some places that were like fast food, healthy fast food chains, but all the food was wrapped in like plastic. And then there's the other alternative where it's much nicer, like small businesses that serve homemade cooked food, but it was really hard to find vegan options. So I thought I may as well create my dream place that I can't find in Brussels. So that was kind of the reasoning behind it. And I started telling people around me that I was thinking of opening a cafe, and everyone took me very seriously. And it was kind of, I was not expecting that. Like, even my parents were like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing now. And I expected them to be like, oh, this is not a responsible decision. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do think they went along with it a bit too easily. Like, I'm really glad I did it, but I was so naive as to how hard it would be. And I think sometimes you have to be naive. Like, it's best not to know, because so many things worth doing are really difficult. I think it comes with not just opening a business, but any personal or professional challenges. And sometimes you have to be, you're so, like, at some point when it got really hard, I was too deep in it to go back. So that's what kind of saved me, and well, not saved me, but that's what meant that the cafe actually opened, because you invest so much money and time, and then you have these huge challenges and you don't feel like you have any choice but to continue forward. So that was nice. Well, I mean, that was positive in the end. So my first few steps of opening the cafe, like, was first of all trying to figure out what steps to take. I was kind of not lost, but I had decided to open a sustainable vegan cafe, but didn't really know where to start. Luckily, in Brussels, there's quite a few business incubators. So there are these organizations that are funded by the government that are free to join, as long as you write a business plan and have some sustainable ethical values, and they consider it that you're helping the city develop in the right direction. And so they help you out, and they help you apply for funding and subsidies. They give you a coach who helps you every step along the way, and that really helped a lot. They give you access to training courses. So I just found one of these incubator places, and they put me on a 3-week course on how to open a sustainable food business. So that was quite broad. It was a course of 20 people, and some people were opening catering businesses, others were opening restaurants, others were opening like food trucks. And it was really nice to be in touch with other people who were also at the same stage of developing a business, because I think opening your own or starting your own business can be quite isolating sometimes, especially when you're doing it alone. You're kind of by yourself with all the big decisions to make. And even though I have like really nice friends that were supportive and my family was really supportive, they didn't know the sector. They were helping me on a emotional support way, but they couldn't really help me make most decisions. So it was nice to have other people to just talk to and brainstorm with, and also just feel like share the struggles with and feel validated in the fact that I wasn't the only one struggling.
Sure.
And so I did that course and wrote my business plan and financial plan, and then started looking for the location for the cafe. And that took about a year. I mean, there was lots of other stuff to do in the meantime, but I would visit places every few weeks or a couple. Like, it really depended on what was available on the market then. But in Brussels, you have like the buildings have to already have the permit to have a restaurant or cafe like in it. So you can't, most areas of Brussels don't give new permits out. So you can't really find a place and then change it. Like if it was a shop before, you can't make it a restaurant. So it's quite limiting in what buildings are available to you. So I was visiting places. During that time, I was developing recipes. I was trying to figure out what the cafe would look like. I was on Pinterest a lot, which was nice. But I did struggle a lot with the fact that nothing was concrete, like real at that point. Everything's very theoretical and up in the air. And even for your financial plan, there are some figures you can't invent until you know what your rent is going to cost and which area you're going to be in. Like even the area or the street can change whether you base yourself off it being a busy street and having lots of people pass by, or if you're in a quiet street, you have to decide on which, like, you have to figure out if there's offices around and how to advertise your business. And there's just a lot of things that depend on where you decide to put your business. So yes, everything was very up in the air, and it wasn't the easiest time. And then the pandemic started. Well, no, first I finally found the place, like the building. It's in this kind of trendy area of the center. I mean, it's still central Brussels, but a bit outside of the touristic center. But it's very nice. It's lots of secondhand shops, lots of vinyl shops, which is very, like 10 years ago, there was probably no vinyl record shops in that area. So those are the two types of shops there are the most of. And then there's a few sandwich shops, restaurants. There's a couple cafes, but not many. There's quite a few bars and Belgian-style cafes, which are mostly, they're like bars that are open during the day. They're like the Belgian version of pubs. We don't really have cozy pubs. We just have very grimy cafes that are glorified bars. It's a typical Brussels thing. So it's a nice mix, and there was definitely a gap in the market for a cafe. Like there was, like on my side of the street, there's no other good place to get coffee. So it's a huge advantage, which is really nice. Yeah, so that was nice when we opened. A lot of the business owners around were like really happy and were like, "Oh, thank you for opening a place where we can actually get a good cup of coffee." So that always feels nice. Yeah. So when I signed the lease for that place, it wasn't available straight away. The landlord still had to do some renovations, and he said it would be ready in 1 year. And I didn't have to pay rent until that year had ended. So that was quite a good deal, just because I felt like I still had a lot of preparations to do. I could start getting an architect to plan the renovations. But then about a few weeks later, the pandemic started. And then suddenly everything was put on pause. The landlord's renovations were put on pause. And then everything just, that year was a bit like a blur. I feel like not much happened. But then 6 months later, I mean, the first 6 months were kind of a blur, but then society started working again, and we started renovating the cafe, which was, the renovations were also a challenge because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. There was much more work to do than expected, but I had a good contractor, and he was very patient with me and explained lots of things to me, because he would ask me questions and I would literally not even understand some of the words in the question he asked me, because they were all very technical terms about construction and like of materials. And he'd be like, "Do you want to use this type of material or this type?" And I was like, "I don't know what these types are." Yeah, but we got there in the end. And I really like the finished product, because I worked with an architect to do the plan, but there's the option so that the architect is there during the entire renovations, but that cost too much money. So I decided not to do that. So I was kind of the project leader during the renovations, which was why the contractor was asking me these questions. If I had taken an architect, he would have asked the architect. But yes, these are all things that I learn in hindsight. Like, yeah. But then also the last year leading up to opening the cafe, my sister was, because of COVID, she wasn't working. So she joined the project, which was very helpful. Like we're quite a good team because I have broad ideas and broad ideas, I would say. And Rachel, my sister, is very organized. So I would kind of tell her all my ideas, the things I wanted to get done, and she would make a plan, which is essential. I'm very grateful for her to have to have helped me during that time. And I think if she hadn't joined the project, we probably would have opened the cafe 6 months later than we did, because I'm not very organized, to be honest, which is a challenge when like opening and managing a cafe. But so we opened at the end of COVID. It was like December 2021. And in Brussels, we still had to like scan people's COVID passes to let them sit inside. So it's a weird time to open a cafe. I don't know if that happened in the UK, where you had to like scan people's QR codes on their phones to like prove they were vaccinated.
I think some places did that.
Yeah, for us it was like the law, so we had to do it. But it was strange. It was a relief when that ended. And ever since then, honestly, it's been uphill. Like, I think the time before opening was much tougher than post-opening. Once it was open, it was really exciting to have our first customers and to build a regular customer base. And to see that people were coming back is very motivating. And so, so then, I mean, there's been a lot of challenges, but slowly but surely, also the job, like every time you start a new job in general, it's a lot of learning. And this was a job where no one was teaching me what to do. So I had to kind of learn by myself. And that was exhausting. I was just so tired the first 6 months. And I'm slowly, like, I'm realizing I have so much energy, much more energy now. And I think it's just because the job is finally becoming automatic and easier, and I know what I'm doing. So that's a relief. There's a lot of feelings of relief when things get easier. Yeah. So I feel like I'm talking a lot, but if you want to ask me a question to like structure what I'm saying, because I feel like I'm
Sure. So now that it's opened, like obviously 2 years later, do you feel proud of yourself?
Yes. Yeah, I do feel proud of myself. It's really hard to let myself say that. I find it's only been in the last 6 months, I think, that I've let myself enjoy it. Of course, I enjoyed glimpses of it before, but there was always a lot of stress. And now there's finally moments where I can stop and take a step back and appreciate things. I think whenever I'm stressed, I really struggle to see positive things. But now I'm really having to work on that. I have a lovely team of people, and sometimes they're the ones who are like, "Isn't this great?" And I'll be like, "Oh, right, this is great.
This is great."
Yeah, they're really nice, and I think the people who work at the cafe really enjoy it, which is really nice to see. So seeing them enjoy it makes me enjoy it more. I'm realizing that it is really nice. Like, our daily job is very nice. We just get to serve people coffees and cakes, and it's more the management behind that I've been struggling with more, but I'm finding ways to manage that. I'm not very good at sitting down and getting stuff done. So, I mean, it sounds a bit embarrassing to admit, but now my mum has come over. She comes over once a week, and we get through everything together. And it sounds, yeah, but I think sometimes you just need someone else there to discuss things, to, when there's an issue, just having another person's opinion is so valuable. And so she's kind of become my like unofficial business partner once a week. And it means there's things that, because also I think it's a question of tiredness. I'm at the cafe, it's almost 6 days a week, depending on the week. And when I get home, I just don't feel like opening my laptop and replying to emails, paying bills. I mean, the bill paying I do because there's a deadline, so that's good. The replying to emails, if there's no deadline, it rarely gets done, which is something I should move on to.
Yeah.
But they're usually companies who reach out and ask if they send me their catalog and ask if I'm interested in their products, for example.
Yeah.
And often they're quite small businesses, so I do want to reply, but I just don't, because it's that one thing too much that I don't feel like I have the time for, but I would like, yeah. So my mum coming over means that even though I'm tired, we'll still sit down and do 3 hours of admin, which wouldn't get done otherwise. So it's finding, methods to manage to get what you need to get done. So that's been very helpful. And I think also at the beginning of the cafe, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome because I felt like I should be able to do all the things that needed to be done, and I just wasn't getting it all done. There was just too much to do. But I struggled to like approach other businesses and ask how they were doing things, because I felt like, who am I to think I deserve an answer from them? I don't know. I had some serious imposter syndrome. Also, just I sometimes thought they would be like, why did she even open a cafe? Because she doesn't know what she's doing. These were my intrusive thoughts. And so slowly, as I gain confidence in the business and in myself, I'm able to actually reach out to other businesses and other people who are doing similar things and ask for their opinions and ask about how they're doing things. And that's been very valuable. And just actually letting myself be a part of a community of people who are doing similar things to me. And I think that's the most valuable thing. It's often community in every way. Like even my team, they're like an amazing team, and I'm so grateful to have them. And sometimes we make changes just because based off their suggestions. And it's so nice to have other people that like think about the cafe and think about how we could improve it. Also, I used to not really ask for help because of the imposter syndrome, but like the fact that my mum helps me now but didn't at the beginning was because I didn't let her help me at the beginning.
Yeah.
So this whole cafe opening business has really pushed me to work on myself as well, which I think has been the most valuable thing. And I think every time I've reached a problem or a challenge in the cafe, I've often had to go back to myself and work on something within myself to fix the problem relating to the cafe. So it's been really good in that sense. I think it pushes me to work on myself more than I would have otherwise.
Sure. So based on that, then I guess, would you recommend, if anyone's watching or listening and maybe wants to also open a cafe or even just start a new initiative, obviously that they should do their research, but they don't have to know everything about it. They should just go ahead and they can learn as and kind of when they go about it.
Yeah, I think you can do that. That's what I did, and it worked so far.
Yeah.
I do think sometimes doing that means you learn the hard way. Like you learn on the job, and sometimes it might be a bit easier to learn beforehand than to start the job. I think it's good to have a balance, because you'll never know everything and you'll never feel ready, I don't think. I did not feel ready before opening. At one point, I was so comfortable in the stage of working on opening a business that I was terrified of the day the business actually opened,
Yeah.
because that was comfort zone. But if I could go back and do one thing differently, is that I would have worked in other cafes and restaurants a bit longer. I had worked in a few places as a student, so it wasn't, or post-student, but always as kind of the lowest stage of responsibility, like just a waitress, a barista. And I think going back, I would have maybe stayed in one place long enough to be made manager, or just take on a bit more responsibility in that place and learn more about their processes and all, like, kind of everything they do in how to order, how to even manage their stock and take in inventory and the cleaning schedule and all the small details that would have probably seemed really boring if I didn't know why I was learning them. But now looking back, like, I would love to go back, and I would love to now be able to take 2 months off the cafe and go to a random restaurant and just work in that restaurant, because I think it's, every place does things differently, but I'm sure there's a most efficient way to do one, like, there's always the most efficient way to do everything. Or there's lots of different ways, but I think it's very valuable to work in different environments. But then, I did figure things out by just opening it. But I was in a rush. Like, even though it took me 3 years, I felt like I was in a rush to open. Yeah. And I always, like, sometimes I would quit working somewhere because I didn't have enough time to work on the project while I was working in the cafe, like in the cafe I was working at. And I would quit and then work on my business plan or financial plan. But I think maybe it would have been valuable to not do it that way and maybe stay in the job for a bit longer. But you never know. I mean, in hindsight, I just think gathering experience is very important.
Yeah. How did you learn about, obviously you have like staff, paying them, so payrolls and stuff. Is that something that you manage yourself?
So no, I don't manage it myself. I go through an agency that pays them.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because it's quite an important thing to do correctly. And I think one day I will learn how to do it myself. I know other cafe owners that do it themselves. It's a bit of admin, but it seems manageable. But the thing is, you do have to dedicate about 2 to 3 hours a month doing it. And if you don't do it on time, your staff doesn't get paid on time. And it's one of those things that I don't feel quite ready to take on, because I'm scared of not doing it on time and then them not being paid on time. Most things I do myself, but for that, I will wait till I feel sure that I'll do it correctly. Yes, so but it's also cheaper to do it yourself because the payroll agency, of course, takes a cut. So it's definitely something I need to do one day.
Sure. And in terms of like sourcing like the products that you guys use, is that kind of something that you do manage as well, or?
Yes, so that's up to me. At the beginning, it was very hard to find the right supplier for the right product. You have to do a lot of shopping around and to find the right prices. So we try to buy most things organic, and I found a couple suppliers that are really good for that. They work like directly with the farmers and the producers, so it's actually quite affordable because there's no middleman. And so we buy from them, and they have quite a strict like value charter. Like they have quite high standards for what they will buy and supply. So I trust them, and so it makes the selection of products much easier. So I have like 5 main suppliers that I buy from, and now that I have them, the job is much easier, and I just order from them every week. But at the beginning, it was a challenge to like find them, and you have to kind of ask other businesses where they get their stuff from, because I tried Googling it, and it was really hard to find that. I went to some organic shops and asked them where they got their products from. So it's a lot of asking. Yeah. But it's also an exciting part because you discover new products and you kind of, your supplier, like once you found a supplier, you look at the other things they have and you kind of can even create new recipes based off what they use, the products they have available. So it's quite a fun part. Yeah.
Sure. And financially, kind of, how have you made sure that the business stays afloat?
So that's been a challenge for sure. It's we had like the energy crisis was kind of harsh, but now things seem to be leveling out. I did have savings beforehand, and when I did the training course with the incubator place, they advised everyone that you might not really get a salary the first year, and you have to kind of be ready for that. You have to prepare yourself for not being able to pay yourself the first year. And I lived at my mum's for the 3 years where I was working on opening the cafe.
Okay.
And I couldn't have done it otherwise. And it was very lucky that I could just go back to my mum's and live there for. And so I was saving up money, and now I do live quite frugally. Like it's much better now, but the first year I genuinely was. Well, the thing is, when you're working so much, you don't spend much money anyway, so quite convenient.
Yeah.
And and I eat most meals at the cafe anyway. So first year was tough, but it wasn't a surprise that it was tough, and I think that was good to know in advance that it's normal not to be able to pay yourself straight away. And when it comes to making it financially viable in general, there's a lot of adjustments. You have to constantly be tweaking things and observing what products work and what products work less. It's very important to know your margins. So I had to get used to creating food cost analyses. Like for every product, I had to check how much it cost. We make a lot of we make cakes ourselves. So we make quite good margins on all the homemade products, but it's important to actually know how much it costs you, because sometimes we were accidentally putting too many walnuts in our carrot cake and suddenly the cost of our carrot cake was much too high. So there's some things to be quite careful of. And that is an ongoing process. And it's about, reducing costs, being really careful of that, and also trying to promote the cafe and getting more customers to come in. One of the big things that made a huge difference was that I hired a social media manager, because social media is so important for restaurants and cafes now. And I just wasn't doing it myself. It's that there's so many little things that you just don't have the energy for when you're working so much. And I think social media is one of those things that can be really fun if you feel creative in that moment and you feel good and rested. But I was just like, back then I was quite stressed and tired, and that is not the moment where you feel inspired to write a nice caption. So I was I was rarely posting, and I realized that it was maybe a good investment to make, to hire a social media manager, and it really did help a lot. I think, we saw, I think, a 30% increase in amount of customers after 3 months of having a social media manager. So it really worked. It was really good. It really does. And she's also created this like kind of a voice on Instagram. Like she definitely has created a style like in our feed, and it's very important, I think, when customers go on there and see a very clear, like they get an impression from our Instagram page, and it's quite a good like a clear brand, because I think it's easy to kind of get lost in posting randomly and not having a clear message. So that's been really nice. And I still work with her. It's been over a year now. And people often come to the cafe and show me a photo on our Instagram page and say, I want this.
Oh, they want that.
I'll be
Yeah.
like, we don't. Yeah. And most of the time we have it. Sometimes we don't, and it's very, like, I feel bad.
Yeah.
But people are very visual, and it's incredible the impact that it has. We've had a few influencers come and post a story, and then the next few days, most people are ordering that exact drink that they posted on their story. And it's so interesting to see. So I think that's maybe something we should be putting even more energy and effort in. Like, we don't have a TikTok page at the moment, but maybe we have to create one. Yeah, there's just more. There's always more to do, which is nice because, like, throughout the whole journey, whenever I've been thinking about how to increase, like, profit, there's always been 10 ideas. There's always so much we can do. It's about having the time to do them. That's the biggest challenge. So, but that's, yeah, positive.
So obviously you've mentioned the social media manager. What does the team consist of?
So, yes, so we have about 7 people who work at the cafe. They're all students because in Belgium it's much cheaper to hire students than full-time employees. I would really like to hire an employee one day, but I think that'll be like in 6 months or a year. So it's a team of 7 people, and they're all very lovely. The social media manager is actually a self-employed person, has several clients, so she's not technically an employee. And yes, hiring the staff was a whole new experience that was quite challenging. My sister was working at the cafe for the first 2 months, and then she got a job. So she helped me, like, she was kind of passing on her job to whoever we hired next. So she helped me in the hiring process, which was really nice. And it was very helpful having 2 people like sit in interviews because myself, it's hard to be like, you need to debrief afterwards. Like, you need someone else's opinion. So I remember the first person we interviewed, it was such a funny like job interview because all 3 of us were super nervous, and my sister and I were both telling the person we were interviewing, like, sorry, this is our first time, we don't really know what to ask you. And it was just not very professional, but it was fun. We did end up hiring them, and they were great, so it was all good. We kind of, at the beginning stages, like, now I kind of, when I hire someone, I base myself off my gut feeling. Like, I kind of get a general idea for them and then feel if it's good or not. But at the beginning, I didn't really know what I was looking for. So I don't think I could follow my gut feeling. We had a checklist of all the requirements. And if someone fit all of them, we just hired them without, because I remember one of our interviews, I wasn't convinced by someone, and Rachel, my sister, was like, well, they checked every box and there were no red flags, so I think we should hire them. And I was like, oh, because I was expecting to feel this like instant feeling of, I know this is the right person, and that didn't happen. But so we hired them, and they ended up being amazing. So then after that experience, I decided not to hope for that feeling of knowing it's the right person and just going off actual facts and concrete stuff. So having a team has been great, but at the beginning it was very hard to delegate and to let go a bit of control, because you have your business and you do everything in a certain way. And then the first day I left the cafe and in the hands of other people and went and had a day off, felt really bizarre. It felt like I was being an irresponsible mother or something. Like, I genuinely felt like I was abandoning my cafe. But over time, it gets much easier. And that's what you have to do. It's just, felt so, it's a process of letting go and trusting people and delegating.
Sure.
Yes.
So much has obviously gone into it. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about what other things I had written down. But I think the biggest thing has been creating a team that I trust, and now also learning how to train people was a big
Mm.
challenge of. And now I've slowly been working on a document that I give to new staff members that they can like read all the information that they need to know. And then I teach them on the job, but knowing that they have the basic information on paper is very good. At the beginning, I didn't do that. And I
Yeah.
would always forget some important information when telling them, like training them. But luckily, like they also train each other. Like whenever two or three people work together, they like all help each other out. So it's good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's been so helpful. Do you have any other final words? Anything that I've left out?
I think that's everything. Yeah, I think we talked about a lot. I feel like
Yeah.
yeah, said a
It's
lot.
really good. Yeah, it's been really good. I'm sure people that watch will be able to pick out some good pointers and things to take forward as well. So yeah, thank
I
you
hope so
so
too.
much.
Thank
Uh,
you.